I'm Cheryl Halling, and welcome to 19 Stories, From Fear to Hope.
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak.
We only have so many
the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the gloves?
One expert says a second
get away from all of these
We all
people.
need some good news.
A message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand. We're gonna make it through this hand in hand.
Thank you for joining me today. This week's episode is going to be a little bit different in that I'm not presenting the traditional interview that I normally do. I started 19 Stories 2 months ago, and I've had the great pleasure of interviewing some wonderful guests from all over the country who have shared their stories with me, what it means to be in their particular part of the country, and dealing not only with the COVID-19 pandemic, but racial issues, economic issues, health issues. And so I thought I would reach out and speak with a couple of other podcasters and get their take on what it's like for them to be continuing their work in the midst of everything going on. And prior to getting into their stories, I thought I would just let you know a little bit about what's going on with me. I live in Sonoma County, California, and most of you may be aware that California has been in the midst of some pretty devastating fires for the past week and a half, almost 2 weeks. The fires here in California, for the 5th year in a row since I moved back here in 2015, where they're becoming more frequent, they're becoming hotter, they're becoming larger, and they're becoming more devastating. And there's also been some other things that have happened in the midst of that. My husband went to the ER due to extremely high blood pressure because of his reaction to the heat and the smoke. We've had some personal finance setbacks. My main computer crashed. Our car died completely. So we're looking at how do you navigate buying a new car in the midst of COVID and social distancing and all that goes with that. So rather than staying in my element of fear, I wanted to reach out and to hear some other voices, and I certainly have valued what my prior guests have offered. And yet I thought I would present to you a collection of voices, also what people are doing to hold on to their hope, because of course that's what this podcast is about. And the questions that I asked the women that we're going to hear from are some of the same questions that I ask any of my guests here on 19 Stories. So without further ado, we're going to hear from these women, and I thank you for joining me, and I'm going to turn it over to some other voices from around the country and a new friend across the pond and hear what they have to say.
My name is Bobbi, and I'm the host of Petty Daydreams podcast. I'm located in the Midwest of the United States in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So the restrictions have affected my life. I am a digital marketer, I'm a realtor, and I'm usually a pretty active person, besides when I really need my downtime. But staying at home or shelter in place, I have become a little bit more reclusive. I have been able to spend some more time focusing on what I really want to do with my life and my career, and spending quality time with my boyfriend and my dog. Something that makes me hopeful would be just thinking about the small efforts of kindness that people are making now, and maybe I'll have a greater appreciation of, interacting with other people and getting to go out and do things with my friends and travel freely when those things are available to us again. And I don't think I'll take them for granted like I did before. I think in terms of something I wish people were mindful of right now, as it relates to how we care for and nurture each other, is to never take any kind of worker for granted. We have essential workers. We have people that normally, are paid like minimum wage here in the United States and are just undervalued and not respected. I think everybody needs to extend kindness to people, in your everyday, like your grocery clerk, the person you pick up your dry cleaning from, etc. Just be good to one another.
Hi, Cheryl. My name is Rashida. I have a podcast called Real and Random because I'm randomly Rashida in my social media handles. The part of the country that I live in is the southeastern side. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I feel that the shelter-in-place restrictions, they truly have not affected or impacted me. I am a software engineer by trade, and I've been working from home for the last 3 years. So there was no real disruption in my world as far as that's concerned. The shelter-in-place affected my kids because they were brought home from school. So that was an obvious change in the dynamic of the house. But thankfully, everyone knows how to kind of sort it out and go to their own little corner and do their own thing. And me personally, I just hang out outside. So I think we've managed that part pretty decently. I think I'm hopeful. I'm most hopeful that I believe there's definitely an ending to all of this, and that this too shall pass. I posted something today on my own social media that talked about celebrating the positives. We focus so much on the negatives, the yesteryear stuff, what I used to be like, what used to happen, what I used to could do. But let's focus on what you do have, what you can focus on, what you can appreciate now. I'm thankful for the pause because it's allowed me to realize I had a lot of wasted time. Even though I was really, really busy in my mind, I had so much wasted time and energy I was using every day. So I've redirected that energy and created a podcast and an online talk show. I'm with my kids more often, and we do more as a family. We've gone out and gardened. We created an outdoor oasis. We have a park out there that we created as a family. We laid sod. Again, we did the garden. We just made it like our new vacation because we can't travel, and that hurts a little bit. But actually, in the end, I'm kind of thankful because I've saved a boatload of money. So again, when you focus on the positives, the negatives aren't quite as bad. So I'm hopeful that people will spend more energy doing that. I also hope that people are more mindful of the little things, maybe not being so judgmental. We all wear masks now, and I can remember this time last year, if you saw someone walking through the airport with a mask, you're looking like, what's wrong with them? What do they have? What's their story? But now we're all doing the same thing if you choose to. So we're all in it together. I'm hoping that people will take time to be reflexive, that people will take time to slow down by choice instead of by force, and that they are also mindful of their fellow man. I think everything that was normal before is completely abnormally normal now. We have these conference calls, we hear kids in the background, we hear dogs barking, pots whistling, and that's all normal now. Before, that would have been insane, absurd, ridiculous, crazy, all of that. I think we have to focus on finding those individual moments with ourselves that we can find peace and solitude. If we need to go in a corner and just meditate or go outside, I often sit out and listen to the birds and nature and feel the wind, the breeze, and just be quiet. And that's something I never did before, especially not to this level. So again, just be focused on what's positive and, appreciate the value of touch, the value of a hug, the value of a kind word, the value of a nice note. Work on those things because people need that. We can't touch each other halfway. We can't see each other. And so we have to focus on bonding in different ways. And again, just being compassionate. So that's what I'm hopeful for. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Joanna Rawbone, and I'm the host of the Flourishing Introvert Talks, the positive podcast for and about introverts that dispels the myth once and for all that we as introverts don't have anything to say for ourselves. As you might tell from my accent, I live in the UK. I live southeast of London, not far from the coast. And for people who know that part of the world, you'll know just how beautiful it is. Kent's not called the Garden of England for nothing. I've run my training and coaching consultancy since 1994 with a broad spectrum of loyal international clients. So you can probably imagine what the COVID restrictions have done to my business. I remember a few scary days back in March when I watched all of my bookings right the way through to May 2021 get cancelled. That's tens of thousands of pounds wiped out almost overnight. As an introvert with a positive outlook and a growth mindset, I took the opportunity to recharge my batteries, refocus on my niche, and get productive from my dining room table. When we heard about the possibility of restrictions being lifted, I created an Introvert Emerging program, knowing that introverts who'd enjoyed working from home would probably find it hard to go back to the hustle and bustle of the workplace. Then sometime in April, a few clients realised that they still needed training in interpersonal and management skills that I helped their people develop. They asked me to provide training virtually using the video technology we've all become so used to now. They were the first glimmers of hope, and they continue to brighten as more clients choose this option. It's not out of choice for them though, and I've had to help long-standing clients feel confident that they'll still get a good return on investment. Personally, as an introvert, I'm enjoying travelling less. I'm not sure that will ever be the same again. And I'm enjoying not having so many silly o'clock starts in the morning. Early on in lockdown, I realised that being confined was going to create tension, or worse, in many households. I delivered a webinar called Surviving Confinement with Extroverted Housemates, which was all about understanding and valuing difference. Introverts need space, quiet and calm to recharge their mental batteries. Extroverts need social interaction, active experiences and change in order to recharge theirs. Being shut in together without that appreciation and appropriate boundary setting could be disastrous. And just at that time when we all need our mental batteries to be fully charged to cope with the stress of the whole situation. So, be mindful of your differences. Value what each brings to a situation and respect each other's boundaries. If opposites attract, take time to maintain that magnetic energy for good. Here's to our flourishing.
I'm Yvette Walker, host of the Positively Joy podcast, and I live in the heartland of America, in Oklahoma, and I have hope. I'm an educator and an administrator at a college, and we are facing some of our greatest challenges in welcoming our students back to school. We've got freshmen who are experiencing for the first time being away from home and just living campus life. And then we have returning students who have expectations about what college is like. And frankly, we've had to turn all that on its head because of everything we're going through right now with the pandemic and our strong desire to keep our students, faculty, and staff safe. But as I said, I have hope. I look around and the students are wearing their masks. They're not complaining. They're sitting 6 feet apart from each other, for the most part. It's definitely going to be different. But the first week of school has been incredibly motivating for me because I see how hard they're working and I see their energy and I see their true desire to want to get an education. And that makes me want to give it to them. That makes me want to say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to jump in and we're going to do this together. I'm going to teach you under somewhat challenging circumstances, and you're going to learn under those same circumstances, but we're going to do it together. The Positively Joy podcast is a faith-based podcast, and I recently did an episode on something that I would love more people to be mindful of when we are discussing taking care of each other, and that's wearing masks in church. I looked around my own church and saw that too many people were not wearing masks, and my husband and I had to make a decision whether or not we can continue going to church if people were not wearing masks. It's a hard call. There are differing opinions on it, but if I had to pick one thing that I wish people would be more mindful of, that's taking care of both themselves and each other by wearing masks.
Hi there, my name is Andrea Johnson. I am a life coach and DISC behavioral analysis consultant. I have a podcast called Intentional Optimists, and it's for unconventional leaders. It is a podcast for women who are looking for ways to step up and lead right where they are. I live near Charlottesville, Virginia, and I am excited to share a little bit about my journey through sheltering in place and the hope that I see around me. Sheltering in place has affected me in several ways. The very first thing that happened was the place where I work, which is a large university medical center. We decided to take everybody remote as quickly as possible. Fortunately, I'm a little bit of a forward thinker, and I had a lot of laptops on hand, and I took 3 different teams of 17 total people and moved them off campus, set up remotely, and started running meetings as soon as I could. It means that people had to learn how to do things digitally rather than on paper, which was kind of nice. It forced us into the digital age. And it also meant that we started collaborating differently and making process improvements in areas that we didn't realize we were going to do. The second thing was I had a 5th grader. My son is starting 6th grade in about 2 weeks. And immediately the schools closed when the governor of Virginia shut everything down, and we had to start doing school from home. And it wasn't true remote. It was just kind of crazy catch as you can. And I think everybody with a child in school knows what that was like. It was chaos. And we tried to keep on a really good schedule, but it was just really tough. My husband is a pastor here in the area, and so we both ended up working from home. But for us at our church, it meant that we couldn't meet together anymore. The nice thing is we were able to start doing our Sunday school and Wednesday night Bible study through Zoom, and my husband started recording videos of his sermons. So we quickly became Zoom experts, like I think most everybody else in the country has done. And we started recording his sermons so that we could send those out for people who may not have access to internet, because our church is really cute. It's in the middle of horse country, and a lot of people up there do not have any internet service at all. And it doesn't have anything to do with it being an impoverished area, but it has everything to do with the fact that it's just out in the country. So we had to learn how to do Zoom. We had to learn how to do video for our church. But the one positive thing was it gave me more time at home to truly focus on my life coaching business. And I had already decided to launch a podcast, and it gave me the time to be at home and to put together everything I needed to launch my podcast. So in a way, it gave me a really good business opportunity. Now, I will tell you that sheltering in place is still hard. Virginia is in phase 3. And so we have been able to open the church up some. And, my husband goes in and cleans all the time. But even this morning, as we were kind of walking through our day, what was going on today, we realized that it's still very stressful. And it still is very, I don't know, it's just hard wondering who's going to be next, because my family has actually been affected. My aunt actually died 2 weeks ago from COVID-19. So there's been a lot of emotional things on our plate. But one of the really positive aspects at the church is we're seeing, and this goes into what you asked about hope, we see a lot of hope in the sense that, man, we have just as many people come into church on Sunday as we did beforehand. And even with masks and Purell and making sure that people are distanced, it's really, really nice to see that. The other piece is I am watching people at my job, women who are, 2 years from retirement, learn all about using an internet camera and learn all about doing everything digitally. The resilience of the human spirit and the courage that I see in people is just so amazing. I am thrilled to watch it. I love watching people make strides in their personal growth. So for me, as a coach, to watch these things is amazing. As far as what I think people can do to help nurture each other and care for each other, we're in the middle of some really hard times. And I think meeting people where they are, being willing to see things from a perspective other than my own, is extremely important. And the more we, as Covey said, seek to understand and then be understood, I think the better off we will be. I like to think of it as kind of looking through a kaleidoscope. When you look through the wrong end of it, it looks like a jumbled mess. But when you turn the kaleidoscope around and you look through, immediately through these prisms, you see these gorgeous patterns. Then when you twist it, you see beautiful patterns change. I think that we can see something really amazing come out of all of this if we're just willing to listen and see things from another's perspective. I think that's where we will find even more hope as we move forward. Thank you.
And thank you, Andrea Johnson of Intentional Optimists, and for all my guests for lending their voices to this episode of 19 Stories. Bobbi Franklin, host of Petty Daydreams. Rashida, host of Real and Random. Joanna Rawbone, our sister across the pond in the UK with Flourishing Introvert Talks. Yvette Walker with Positively Joy Podcast. And again, ending with Andrea Johnson of Intentional Optimists. I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips in so aptly painting the picture of the fear that we're facing during this pandemic. BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. Thank you again for joining me today. Feel free to offer feedback or a story idea at 19stories@soundsatchelstudios.com. Visit my website at soundsatchelstudios.com, via Instagram at CherylHollingVO. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories From Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
Together with our differences, together we are bolder, braver, stronger.
I'm so grateful to all of these women for sharing a bit of their stories and their time that it took to do so.